There are odds on 4 quarterback competitions on the DraftKings Sportsbook. You can find these a couple different places. Curious, Danny, who you think's going to win the starting job in each of these competitions. So let's go one by one through them. The Denver Broncos, quarterback to play the week one first snap of the season. They list 3 QBs actually. Bo Nix, the heavy favorite at minus 425. Jarrett Stidham plus 450, and Zach Wilson at 10 to 1. Knicks, they drafted just outside of the top 10, to everybody's surprise. Jarrett Stidham, who has been there and has a chance to compete for the backup job with Wilson. And Wilson, who they just acquired via trade right before the draft from the New York Jets. New York completely moved on from him after a couple of seasons of him struggling. Then Aaron Rodgers got hurt, so he got one last chance, and it didn't go a whole lot better. Knicks, Stidham, Wilson, who starts the first game of the season?
That's Bo Nix's job. I think it was always Bo Nix's job. I think they traded for Zach Wilson, the least you could possibly give up for somebody, just in case they couldn't land a quarterback in round one. Like if someone else traded up or beat them to the punch and they couldn't land Bo Nix or whomever they had their eyes set on at this point, now it looks like it was Bo Nix, then that guy might start for a minute or two, but this is Bo Nix's gig.
So I would have drafted Bo Nix at 12, I think is where they took him. I think that's the pick they had, just outside of the top 10. To me, he feels more like a second round pick. I guess it's possible I could have moved up into the late first round to get a fifth year option on him. But my plan would have been take Bo Nix in round 2, unless I just think there's no way I can get him. Maybe take him at the end of the first round. And that gives me some flexibility to start Wilson for a few games. I've got a better coaching staff than the Jets have offensively, led by Sean Payton. Better plan, better design. I've got some decent weapons. Let's just kick the tires on Zach Wilson. And it gives me basically 2 lottery tickets. Now, you almost know that you're not going to hit the lottery on Zach Wilson. Whereas Bo Nix is intriguing. That's an enticing commodity after a really nice college career, both in the SEC at Auburn and in the Pac-12 at Oregon. But the more lottery tickets you have, the better the chance that you win a couple of bucks, right? So I probably would have rolled with Wilson for a few games and then played Nix, who I got later in the first round or the second round. They didn't do it that way.
No, they did not.
They took him at 12. And because of that, I think you're right. I think he starts. The other thing to remember about Bo Nix is Bo Nix threw almost 2,000 passes in college. That's an insane amount of time on the grass. Like we talk about Jaden Daniels and how much ball he played, 55 games, right? You can talk about Michael Penix in that same light. Bo Nix is the same as those guys in that it was 5 years of college ball, and he was on the field pretty much the whole time. Whereas like Daniels, remember, missed part of the COVID season because out west in the Pac-12, they didn't play the whole year. In the SEC, they were like, we're just going to play football. So you guys can watch us if you want or don't, whatever you prefer. And so Bo Nix that year played 11 games during the COVID year and threw almost 400 passes. So you're talking about 5 seasons as a full-time starter, essentially, and almost, I think it's like 60 career games. There's not a whole lot he hasn't seen at a high level in college, which is why I think he'll be on the field sooner.
I think that's the extra ingredient too, right? If they'd somehow ended up with Drake May, or maybe I don't know. Just it sounds like maybe May's doing well, but you know what I mean. Like if there's someone, okay, maybe we need to buy him a month or two, we could start Zach Wilson. But this to me is we got a guy that's as veteran as you can be coming out of college. It's his gig.
The Indianapolis Colts are the next team that have a quarterback competition ongoing where you can get odds. Gardner Minshew is seen as the favorite. Aiden O'Connell is seen as the underdog. This one's actually really interesting. And I think it's very rare, Danny, that you actually see a true competition where camp performance or preseason output matters a whole lot. But I could actually absolutely see that here. Minshew is much older. He's 28. He's not a prospect. You kind of know what Gardner Minshew is. Whereas O'Connell, after his rookie year last season where he flashed a bit with 12 touchdowns and 7 picks, is probably viewed as more high upside or having some more ceiling. But it's not like he's a kid. He was one of these guys, again, COVID related, but an old rookie. He was 24 last year. He's 25 now. In fact, he's going to turn 26 years old on September 1st. So he actually was 25 all of last football season as a rookie, which is crazy. So he'll be 26 years old. I'm not sure how much more roof there is for him than what we've already seen, but because he's a little bit younger, because it's the same staff that started him and developed him last year, I would actually take the plus money on the underdog here and say O'Connell to Minshew. Because if you go the other way, you're basically confirming Aiden O'Connell's never going to be a starter. Whereas if you start with O'Connell and then you go, to Minshew,
Right.
essentially you can kind of make the case like, oh, we kicked the tires on him, we tried. Minshew's probably going to play well enough that O'Connell wouldn't get on the field if he plays in week 1. We saw it with Indianapolis where, they went 7-6 in his 13 games last year and had a chance to make the playoffs as a wild card team in week 18.
Yeah, I do not get what the Raiders are doing, for the record, by the way. I think this is a bizarre situation that I would try to never find myself in, and they seem to be sprinting headlong into it. So good on you, I
think
suppose.
they probably wanted a rookie in the top of the draft, and it didn't work out that way.
And it didn't happen? Yeah. It's just,
would you have taken Bo Nix?
Yeah, I'd have done that instead of this, but like I'm so allergic to this. Other teams don't have my decades of anxiety and crippling fear and horrible feelings about this kind of situation where there's no upside in either of the guys and it's a big waste of time. They seem to be signing up for that, but you're probably right. I actually bet that it's Minshew, and not because of I would do what you said. I'd start with O'Connell and go to Minshew if needed because I think it wouldn't work as well going the other way. But I think coaches and foolish people are trying to make their approach look decent. This is the Rivera kind of plan. So they'll squeeze up maybe half a win more with Gardner Minshew. So I think he'll end up getting the gig.
I should clarify, too. I mentioned should they have taken Knicks. They picked after Denver.
Mm-hmm.
They picked 13th. So what could they have done, really? I mean, 6 QBs. All 6 of them were gone. They would have had to trade up to like 11 to take Bo Nix. You're giving up a king's ransom to do that? Absolutely not. Are you trading up to 10 to take J.J. McCarthy? I know you don't think that highly of him.
No, I wouldn't have.
Okay.
So maybe that's it.
So they didn't really have a choice. I mean, the only thing they could have done is sign another Jaggy-type veteran in the offseason.
Which I don't do.
They did that with Minshew. So, yeah. I mean, you're down on what they did. What should they have done differently?
I guess I wanted to hear that they tried really, really hard to move up in the draft and get somebody. And if I don't know that I heard
Jaden
that.
Daniels. That was the big report.
Remember? That was the Raiders?
Yeah. Antonio Pierce and Jaden Daniels liked each other. And we don't know that they were the team that tried to trade with Washington. But there was one offer, remember, that Adam Peters said they got?
Because I only remember that the Giants tried to trade up to 3 to get Drake May for the trade-up part.
Because Breer reported it. But that Peters said in an interview on the radio in town that there was one offer that they got.
And it wasn't close enough.
Took it that serious.
Right.
But one of the reports before the draft was that the Raiders really wanted Jaden Daniels. Remember, that's where Daniels wanted to be because of Antonio Pierce. Let's go to the Minnesota Vikings. They went and signed Sam Darnold as their bridge stopgap quarterback, coming off of a season in the Kyle Shanahan Reclamation Society. And then they drafted J.J. McCarthy. Darnold is the favorite for the first snap of the year in week 1. McCarthy is the underdog at plus money.
I think McCarthy wins this job. And maybe it's because I'm so low on Sam Darnold and I just wouldn't waste time in this era that they're in, because this is a pretty decent club. And I maybe need to take a couple of beatings early on to make sure that my best quarterback is playing his best football in November and December. And that might mean I got to give J.J. McCarthy some growing pains. I know coaches don't think of it that way, but maybe that's the element. I think he ends up winning that gig.
I would start McCarthy. I think they will start Darnold. I don't think he's going to have a long leash. It's probably a few weeks to a month. There's no rush necessarily. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if it was McCarthy. But Darnold, to me, with their weapons and that offense, if they can run the ball with Aaron Jones that they brought in, would be a good enough
can be decent
caretaker to get them off to what you were just talking about, where you're a coach, you want to try to compete in that division. You're 2-2, you're 3-3 or something, and then you go to McCarthy. My guess is he plays around week 4, week 5. Last one here, we'll squeeze in. The Patriots, quarterback to play first week 1 snap. Jacoby Brissett minus money, the favorite. Drake May plus money, the underdog here. Now, I would start May. I think they will start Brissett for the same reason I just said with McCarthy. There's not really a rush. And it's also perceived, didn't play a lot of college, a little bit more raw learning. Although I don't know if you saw the video making the rounds of him yesterday, where a lot of people were really impressed with him grabbing receivers and talking about how he wants them to run their routes. That was cool to see, showing some leadership. But I think Brissett probably gets the nod in week 1. You also have like an Antonio Pierce-ish, former linebacker, recent former player, hat on a hat kind of head coach who's a little more old school. I think if you're younger or analytical or offensive minded, maybe you go with the kid strong armed quarterback. But in the same way that Pierce is doing the Minshew O'Connell dance, like I could see Gerard Mayo say, "Hey, Jacoby, I'm gonna give you a shot." I think they were teammates at one point in New England. I could see that.
I'm 100% convinced it's going to be Brissett for the reasons you just stated. I think it's a mistake. I think it's a waste of time and an opportunity. But everybody that's in this short-term thinking mold, like a coach or whomever, has to have some success to basically buy some credibility. This regime doesn't have much credibility, right? This isn't Bill Belichick getting to do whatever he wants for 25 years. This is kind of neophyte. We need to hit the ground running. No one's going to be thinking long-term, which would be to give Drake May every possible rep. They're going to start Brissett early and then maybe give way to Drake May.